the WASI interface specifications, then these should be mostly portable. Um, it, if we if we get bifurcation and we get all sorts of like the more specialized you make your component, the less portable it'll be, right?
Is that frowned upon generally in the ecosystem?
Um, it usually goes like kind of the onion. So the center of the onion is like the WASI component specifications, and then folks put layers around it. So like you'll add an LLM interface, but there isn't a standard LLM interface, so you've defined your own, but it's additive to the entire world. So you still have all the system level stuff that you would expect, but you've added your own other things to describe your world, which that makes sense. Then as those custom things that as a vendor you start putting in, the more folks that depend on those, the harder it will be for folks to move from one provider to another provider. Uh, and as you see like commonality between these, really somebody's probably going to go write a good SQL interface or something like that, which works for like 90% of people. And then you would hopefully see, vendors say, okay, cool. Hey, we're going to go run this. But if you really want to run, very specific Postgres stuff, here we have a specialized version of the Postgres driver, and you can use that instead. But that makes it harder for you to move over to someone else, something like that. So you still get the trade-off. It's just hopefully that the balance is that the standard interfaces cover 75% of the things. Terrence, I think you're muted.
Sorry. That sounds good. How much do you want to partner on writing some bill packs? Is that what you're volunteering for?
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna be hacking on some build packs, and I may have questions and ask for help occasionally.
Cool.
I want to be
Uh,
around and if I take notes in a meeting or something like that, help out where I can.
yeah. No, I mean, I'd love to hack on some of this stuff, time permitting. So maybe we can pair up on trying to build out like what a WASM build pack could look like, kind of
Awesome.
separately. And I'm sure I'll have a bunch of questions around WASM, and you'll have a bunch of questions around build packs, and hopefully, uh, the sum is greater than its parts there.
Sounds great. I really appreciate it.
Cool. We have 10 minutes left, give or take. I did want to circle back on the exec I guess is actually what it is. The exec RFC. I can link it in. But that's the one that Jesse was saying is under ready for review. I think as I was going through it and some comments from last time. I guess for context, you're probably not as familiar, David, but this is an RFC to support different execution environments. So right now, build packs are really geared towards production workloads, essentially, right? Like I'm doing a thing, I'm getting an OCI image, I want to run it in production, staging, and whatever. And there's been a lot of requests, like we've seen this just like around where you get people in your platform that are like, great, I have this thing, so I don't have to do stuff, write a Docker file for my for Java. But now when I want to run tests in my internal CI environment, like I now have to build a Docker file to support all those things because your build pack doesn't help me there, right? Or local dev, or think of any number of other use cases, right? And so the idea behind this is like making changes in the spec to enable build pack authors to potentially uh, target like specific execution environments that you may want to run your image in. So the thought process here is like if my build pack supported production and testing, like when I pass like tests as the execution environment, I could build a separate test image that you could run in your CI platform that I wouldn't run in production, and then I can do a production build kind of independent of that. I know when it comes to testing, people have lots of opinions. So this is an RFC from like 2 years ago, looking at the date February 2023. So I'm finally circling around back to it in 2025 and hoping to get consensus and push it through. I had questions for Joe on registry bits. Should we add stuff in here in the build pack TOML and in the registry so people know what environments a build pack supports without digging through the code or running it? And is that a thing that should be part of this RFC?
Yeah. Was it not? I thought you had something.
I think I had an open question about it. So
Okay, I thought I recalled seeing a schema. Wait, so you're talking about the build pack TOML, right?
yeah,
So
the build
for in
pack
the build pack
TOML, like the
metadata.
metadata file, like when I write a build pack,
Yeah. Um,
should there be a key that's like an array where
yeah,
I specify?
absolutely. I think that's a good idea. What I'm wondering is like how much enforcement do we put around it? Like,
Can you?
yeah, I don't know. I haven't thought about it. I think it's definitely a good idea if it even if only as metadata. But then if we think we might put some kind of like guardrails or actual mechanisms around it later, that could be problematic if people are using it kind of lackadaisically.
I just don't know how you would add
Yeah, yeah.
guardrails to a thing, right? Like if I'm a build pack and I'm doing a thing for tests, like you can write a build pack in any language you want. So how do I know that you're doing like I could pass tests to you? How do I know you support it or not without executing the code and like verifying the output, right? Like maybe test support is
Sure.
literally doing everything but adding a file here for a particular language or whatever, right? Like, or like the difference for like Go might be production is you just end up with the production Go binary, and test is you keep the source code around and you add a bunch of tooling and stuff, and it like looks totally different, right? So I
Yeah.
feel like it's
Yeah.
very kind of case by case.
Yeah, totally. We could finalize this RFC without that and do it in a follow-up as well. Like I think that's something that could come later if you want to separate it out. But
I
I
mean,
mean I think we should.
I just don't think it's a big add if we think it's what we want to do to the RFC,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, sure. Especially if there's no mechanisms, right?
I yeah, I just can't think of an automated way to even come close to enforcing something like that when you're doing code execution. But it's not my area of expertise. The other comment I wanted to dig into that you commented on, Joe, was this like all or star at when you do an actual build pack execution. I just don't know what you actually want to do there because I think it doesn't work unless you want a fat image, but then if you have a fat image, like it breaks down in certain use cases, like the Go one I said before, right? Like, how do I build a fat OCI image for both tests and production? Or you don't have to take Go, but like a language where you potentially want to RF workspace, like the app source code, like you essentially would have to like make a copy of that thing and basically like set those layers separately. And then you have this fat image that the I don't know, like do you export more than one image? Like what do you do here? Or what do you want?
I'm trying to pull up my comment because I don't actually I remember commenting on it, but I don't remember what I was thinking at the time. I, I think well, I think my concern was more generally around the consistency between the two different places where we were like in one place it's like no environments mean something, and then in another place it was like star
yeah.
means something.
Yeah, so I think to separate those out, there's two kind of different contexts there, right? Which is
Hmm.
what makes it confusing. There's one where like I am a and these are for potentially backwards compatibility or other kind of things because this didn't exist in the spec before, and so you might have a build pack that supports it, right, but a lifecycle that doesn't, or a lifecycle that supports this thing, but you're running it with maybe some build packs that do and some build packs that don't respect it, right? And so in the one, like if you are an app developer as an app end user, and I have a project TOML where I'm setting the build packs that I want to run, you potentially want to run like it's a 1 to like n kind of thing where like I'm
Yeah, no,
defining
I
a single
see.
file
I
that
see.
runs n times. And the inverse is like I'm a build pack and I'm in a single execution, right? So I'm on the n side of like a single thing. And so in that former case of the app developer, I'm thinking about all the use cases and I'm in a single file. So like it makes sense to talk about multiple execution environment things, right? Like I want this build pack to run in both test, dev, and production. I want this build
Yeah,
pack to
no,
run
no,
through some
I
tests.
think I get it. No, I think I'm convinced. And actually, the Golang example of two things that are conflicting
Yeah.
is important. So
Okay.
yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, really, my check was more around like this feels like, you know, they're inconsistent between each other, but I don't know if that's the case anymore.
Yeah. I do get it's confusing because like you have to think about it a lot more.
Right, but like I think most people will be using it from one side or the other, right?
Yeah. Um, and then what I have for open questions, I think I added some new ones at the bottom. If we care to answer them before closing them.
There is a question about using env as it's overloaded. I'm actually supportive of using env even though it is overloaded because it was overloaded before we got there. And the other ones I'm not a fan of.
Okay. Stuff that I think is interesting to me is I know it makes sense to talk about potentially to reserve certain strings for the execution environment, like a test. I know from my conversations with Yehuda Katz, he doesn't like the word production because you have staging. Like you would probably use production for staging in that execm and not probably write a whole new set of things for that in a build pack, most likely. Uh, and so he finds that kind of confusing and maybe a little restrictive. So I don't know if people have alternative suggestions for that, like runtime. Well, probably not runtime, launch. I don't know. Something else besides production. Welcome to word bike shedding, the best part of RFC.
Wait, so I'm not sure I understand his concern in terms of how it's used. So I agree that staging would use production, like a staging environment would use production. So what's the,
He
I don't know,
just
can you
doesn't
restate
like
it?
the word production because it implies like a production like production is overloaded, similar to like how environments overloaded.
Yeah, I don't
Um,
want to get into the game of coming up with better terms for things that people are pretty actively using though. Like I don't disagree with them, but like I'm just not sure I want to be in the business of reinventing that. We've gotten into trouble with that in the past, like with Stack, right?
yeah.
Um,
There might be a better word, so I'm just kind of
sure.
throwing that out there since I couldn't think of one easily off the top of my head, or I would have suggested it. So there was that. The other one that Jesse suggested, not word, but the other kind of thing he posed to me was, do we want to namespace the strings at all? So an example of this could be, let's say there's some use case that we identify that exists in the ecosystem, like maybe UAT or something that is different than just tests. Maybe you want to separate test out or whatever. And the problem you have if you don't namespace is that if you try to reserve and do a thing at the spec level, then is that it's kind of breaking to the rest of the ecosystem.
Yeah, let's just what I would suggest is let's pick a character like a colon and reserve it. And then we can, if we think we need namespacing later, we can use that, right? So like we would restrict it now. I think the colon would be the obvious character if you have like, because I think what you're saying is like test colon UAT or something like that. Or maybe like buildpacks.io colon
You
UAT.
could just do CNB slash or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
CNB slash
Well, and
test.
whatever character it is, I think like, I don't know if I want to expand scope to that right now because I think that while possible, is somewhat
low
over preparing for
probability.
something. Yeah.
But it was a
I
concern,
mean,
and I didn't disagree
yeah,
with
yeah.
it. But
Yeah, no, and I like the idea of like building in some ability to um, make these more robust, right, in the future.
And then the last one for me was labels. It makes sense that you want to not have to dig into the image to know what the execution environment is of the image that you just produced as a platform. And so I think labels are probably the right way to go. Do we want, I think I went with just having a kind of top level label. And I was kind of looking at the spec, but like potentially we could put in one of the metadata ones, but then we'd have to add a key somewhere. I didn't know if there was like if people had preferences on like which label to jam it in or to just like do a new one. I kind of just did the new one because I think any of the ones really fit very well because they're very like lifecycle specific config file into label transformations. And so this would, I guess, be kind of breaking that because this isn't in those files.
What's the label that you propose? But in any case, I agree with
IO
you.
buildpacks.execenv. It's under the platform API section. And I said it would be the value from CNB execenv environment variable.
Yeah, I think that's support that over jamming it into something.
Yeah, I know Jesse didn't have a super strong opinion on the lifecycle side, but I figured it's worth asking here. Cool. So it sounds like the action items are add a thing about buildpack toml / registry, and then something about a namespace character, potentially. And then I think we're good to go from there unless people have other concerns. I don't know if this is something you would use at all, Ozzy, kind of on the Red Hat side, or you're kind of indifferent.
I don't think so, not on my own, but maybe future.
Cool. All right. And that puts us at time. Thanks, y'all. See you next time.
Thanks, Terrence. I had a quick question if anybody's got time. I am curious. I put a note on the agenda about the meeting recordings. And Joe, I saw you respond. Yeah, you responded. Do you know if any of the previous meetings are still available somewhere?
It looks like the recordings are there. Let me pull it up again.
Like I was looking for one from December of 2024. And I didn't see it, but I might have just been missing something.
Or definitely not. It definitely won't be on YouTube.
Okay.
It's kind of weird when I look at the.
Is it in like Zoom Cloud or something?
Itself. I kind of just don't. Yeah, that's what I was looking in.
Yeah.
It looks like. I don't know. I kind of don't understand the interface here. There's a bunch of like I can't find this meeting. In Zoom.us or whatever. So I can take another look.
Yeah.
I'll keep looking, but from now on, it should be fixed from now on. So.
Perfect. Yeah, and I'll message you in Slack. There's a specific one that I'm looking for, and maybe you might be able to spot it and send it somehow. Cool. Thanks, y'all.
Cool.